Hey Noah,
Hey, Freddie.
are you a big jazz boy or a little jazz boy?
I would consider myself either a big jazz boy or a little jazz man.
A little jazz man. There you go.
What about you, Freddie?
I'm a big jazz man myself.
Well, think pretty highly of yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a great bit.
Yeah, I was like, well, I don't know where to go with that.
Welcome back
Welcome back.
to the Album Spotlight Podcast, the only podcast that puts a spotlight on albums. My name's Noah,
My name is Freddie.
and today we're talking about Shibuboshi by Shibusashirazu. No, god damn it. Shibusashirazu.
I think we're like in the vicinity of it.
I think another couple months of trying to pronounce it, and I'll be golden.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. So yeah, as you can tell, we are not Japanese speakers, which is unfortunate because, of course, this is a Japanese album.
although
And so
it's
we are,
an instrumental album, or mostly instrumental anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the only like discernible lyrics I think are in English.
Yeah. I believe that's true. So it's not like there's a language barrier or anything. We're just gonna mangle the name of the band and the album. This here album.
Gee, well, this here album.
Well, golly gee, this here album is a jazz album. We're back on our jazz shit.
We're back on our jazz shit. We did McCoy Tyner. Have we done any other jazz?
I'm pretty sure that's it so far.
Wow, it's interesting. I feel like it feels like we've done more jazz than that, but we really haven't. Yeah.
What makes you feel like we have?
I don't know. I guess I'm just wrong.
It's your delusions.
I guess I'm just an idiot. I don't know. Like, I feel like I think about jazz a lot, and it's like probably one of the genres I listen to the most.
Jazz is a
Anyway.
bigger part of our musical identity than we've explored thus far.
Then we let on. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is another album in the vaguely avant-garde jazz camp.
So it's a little generous just to call it like a jazz album.
Yeah.
Because it's really like, it's like a jazz band, but it's also like got very heavy elements of the kind of like, I don't know, even like brutal prog, I guess. Like it sort of has this like jazz rock thing.
Yeah.
With like these very grand songs, which are very like have like a clear sort of rock leaning to them, but in a very like large, like
Very grand scope.
very grand scale and scope. Yeah.
Yeah, and it certainly is jazz fusion, although not really in the way that almost anything else is jazz fusion.
Yeah, it does have. I mean, it has electric instruments. It's a jazz album with electric instruments.
Yeah.
You know.
Like, I suppose it is fusing some other genres with jazz. Well, I don't know. I think a lot of jazz fusion fans could get into this album potentially, but they gotta be okay with a certain level of chaos, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think free jazz people who are
Yeah.
okay with electric instruments could get very into this.
Yeah, because free jazz is
It is
also
very heavy.
definitely the strong element here.
Yeah.
I suppose we're throwing around a lot of jazz terms without really defining them too strongly, although if you're here, you probably vaguely know what we're saying.
Yeah, well, that shows that we're smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can use words at a quick rate.
hmm Without
So,
demonstrating
smart.
that we have an understanding of any of the terms that we're using.
If you use like only like a couple like jargon words, then people can like ask you individually what those words are, and then you're like tested on whether or not you know it. So what you really want to be is just like throwing out as many of them as possible, in which case you will like overwhelm anyone listening to you, and they won't even be able to like stop to like try to ask you what the words mean. You know, they'll just like let it wash over them. That's where you want them.
Indeed. That's always been our ethos on this channel.
Yeah, that's our primary guiding purpose.
Yeah. In life, really. Like, as soon as the cameras go
yeah,
off,
really,
it's even worse, if anything. This is a cry for help.
It's a kind of horrible way to live. Okay, tell us a little bit about this, about what this album is and who is the Shibusashirazu
Well,
orchestra, Noah.
I'll tell you what. This is a jazz ensemble from Japan, and to be quite honest, there isn't much more I know about them than that. They aren't especially popular in the United States. I don't know how much of a following they have in Japan. Enough to make music professionally, I imagine, but I don't know beyond that. Lots of members, a revolving door. I think they seem to have been around for a while, but most of their stuff their studio output anyway has been from the 2000s on.
Yeah, my impression is sort of like within the sort of micro scene of like sort of artsy jazz people in Japan, like quite a lot of people like just like cycle through them at some point, and they've been around for like quite a long time.
So in terms of jazz formations, I guess, the last album we talked about, the McCoy Tyner one, it's not really an ensemble, it's just like a small group of musicians. That's where like
a small little band.
Yeah. Just like a few guys.
A 4-piece or something.
Yeah, I think that's how like I would say maybe most classic jazz albums are made, is just like a handful.
Yeah, at least starting in like the bebop era.
Yeah,
because it was like small few piece bands were like really in.
Yeah,
like before that with like swing bands, it was always really big. But
but that was like so old that it like mostly predates the like LP.
Yeah, that was like before like the real like intense recording era. Well, like sort of peaking in like the 30s was like the whole like big band thing with like big swing bands, and then like starting in the 40s you had like bebop, where things really went down to like the small bands again, and then that became what was most popular. Though it never really reached the heights of popularity that it did earlier during that era. But you had like you had some albums from that era that got very big. So big band was sort of like more like the retro thing, and now it's just all super fucking old.
Yeah.
So you can do whatever. This is very much like on the big band side of things. It's just like a very large ensemble, and so it's doing sort of a fusion thing, but that's like it's far from like just like a fusion-y album. And then it has like a very clear big band thing, and at times it like is like sounds like proper big band music, but then also it's just kind of like a lot of it's kind of like jazz rocky, and like has this very like sort of proggy thing going on, and then they just have this whole like free jazz infusion throughout. It's just a really wild cocktail.
Like it has some predecessors, like some precedent for it to an extent, like Charles Mingus's big band stuff. In the 60s and 70s was kind of, even like Miles Davis's Bitches Brew was like this huge, not as big as this I don't think, but like a pretty large ensemble of like pretty dissonant, tense, anxious jazz fusion.
There's perhaps like one like very direct predecessor to this, which is of course Sun Ra.
Right.
Who is doing completely weird avant-garde, completely like just nothing else like it. Was making music for quite a long time.
You can't really connect Sun Ra to an exact scene if that was happening alongside him, because he was, I mean, kind of literally in his own world.
He did like free jazz for a while. And like free jazz, it doesn't sound like any other free jazz. He did some fusion-y stuff, but it sounds like nobody else's fusion-y stuff. There's several tracks on this album or that are coming from the Space of the Place album, and that's just kind of like really its own thing. It's very hard to pin that to any sort of particular style. It just sounds like Sun Ra.
Yeah.
how would you describe like the sound of this album?
Yeah,
So people have like an idea what we're talking about.
yeah. That's I guess we should do that at some point. The single word I would use to describe it is overwhelming. Like
That's a good word.
when you first put it on, like pretty much immediately you're just hit with this wall of kind of noise. Like it's pretty consistently
Yeah.
noisy, and like there are a million things going on at once. Yeah, it's just firing on all cylinders for most of the runtime. I don't know. It's like listening to jazz while you're in a pot of boiling water or something.
Oh, that's good. That's a good I like that. Yeah, it's like listening to a big band show while you're like fucking feet or like in boiling water, or you're in like a big cauldron of boiling water.
Yeah. It's like a jazz as a
Yeah.
swarm of bees.
Yeah.
It's shifting around you. It's hard to keep track of anything, but it's all very loud, very noisy, very
Yeah.
aggressive. It's not disorganized at any point. I mean, there are points where everything starts to like drift apart a bit, but like it's obviously intentional because it just snaps right back at the right moment.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I guess that's how I would describe
Yeah.
it. Do you have better, more concrete ways
Yeah, I
of
mean
saying it?
it's often yeah, I think one of the things that was honestly like it was like it took like a couple listens to like kind of understand or like start to like make sense of is just like the production. It does not have a particular like excess of dynamic range. It is like
Yeah.
it is everything. It's produced in a very like this is loud, this is right in your fucking ears, you don't get to like pick apart the individual performances and instruments very much at all. It's much more like everything just sort of like melds together into a big massive sound. There's a lot of like classic jazz, which is quite like intense, but it's generally produced in a very like there's a pretty standardized production style,
Yeah.
in like the 50s and 60s and stuff, which was very like a simulation of being in the room. Generally, was kind of the idea, and like the dynamics were pretty pronounced generally, and if it was like really intense and hard to make sense of things, it was because that's what it would sound like in the room, and like this is like something that's different about this is that like there's clearly like a heavy like digital element
Yeah.
to like the sound of them. Like the production is not transparent,
Mhm.
It's very like it has its own character, and it's being like mobilized towards a certain intense kind of end, which is very which is sort of atypical for a jazz album. And even like just I'd say general like goes against general production wisdom, and so it sounds very like it has a certain like bloated quality to it, which can be kind of like hard to get your head around you first hear because it's really intense, but I think it really works, and I really like warmed up to it. Like it does often just turn into like sheets of noise basically, but it is like what's kind of remarkable when you step back a little bit is that actually like it's often like extremely catchy.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these songs are actually like very simple in terms of like very clear like straightforward idea behind them that's very like immediately graspable, and so it has a certain like catchy quality to it, which is really funny.
Yeah, they're very composed for the most part. Like the songs themselves are very composed, but it's just there's so much happening around it that it kind of intentionally obscures itself. Usually there's like a lot of collective improvisation happening with numerous instruments on top of it, where they're kind of intentionally crowding the mix with like dissonant noise. Since the pace of everything is so fast and energetic, the like aggressive quality of the performances, it all creates this kind of adrenaline rush as you're listening to it.
Yeah.
The line that any like free jazz adjacent thing has to toe is like, how can I make this stretch the bounds of jazz, like the boundaries of jazz, without just being incomprehensible, pointless noise?
Yeah, like that's such an interesting thing, like in the evolution of jazz is like there's one through line that you can draw through the history of it is like starting with marching bands, like music where it's very like boom boom do, do, like very like blocky and whatever,
Yeah.
and being like, oh, I'm gonna add a little swing to that. I'm gonna like do my own thing a little bit, and it'll still be the song, but it's gonna have a little swing. It's gonna have a little and it mixed in some blues or whatever. And there, as it evolved, it was like solos became more formalized, and then you had like and stuff, and you had like bebop was like a big part of it was moving the rhythmic center onto like the hi hat. So that was like the thing that was really keeping the time, and so you free up the kick and snare to be doing their own thing, and then at the same time using bebop harmony allows much more space for improvisation. And you had things like modal jazz, which opened up even more space, and then finally into like free jazz. So it's like this thing of like finding ways to like remove things that are kind of like blocky and square, and keeping and allowing for more like freedom for the musicians, while not just like taking away all structure and making it incomprehensible, like maintaining the strength of the song and allowing to even like flesh out the idea stronger by like removing things that are constraining you, but not like losing the fidelity of the idea. I think that's just like such an interesting thing. It's at the core of
Yeah.
at least the evolution of like one line of jazz, and it's like yeah.
Yeah, it's like stripping away all of those things and seeing what's left and what you can do inside of that space.
A way I sort of have been seeing this album is really like like it's been a while since I've heard that Space of the Place album. Like I love Sun Ra. He's like one of my favorites, and so it was fun to like go back to that. Partially just realize how like fucking good that album is.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, like the way it's just like the songs just sort of like lumber along in this very like organic but like extremely bizarre way. It's all about like grasping out into like the void of the unknown or whatever. Like that's like his whole thing. If you don't know who Sun Ra is, he's like the sort of like Afro futurist thing. And so I think it's like I see this album, this Shibusashirazu, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to pronounce that well. The way I like see this album is they're sort of like they have two Sun Ra songs on here. It's clear the line of influence is clear, and I think it seems like they're trying to do to me is just like continue that like drawing out of like this demon inside of the music. And letting it just like burst out in this even more sort of explicit way than in like the Sun Ra stuff, or at least on that album. And so it's like and so they just like let these ideas explode out into these like extremely intense places, but it like keeps that quality of there being like a living thing inside of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of the way they do that, I think, is by having a greater emphasis on the rock elements of jazz fusion.
Yeah, they really incorporate that stuff.
Yeah, like the drum sound, for example, I think is really unique for jazz because it's really pops out of the mix in a way that most jazz drums don't. I don't know if it's the way it's mic'd or something, but it's really booming.
Yeah, it's definitely very compressed.
Yeah.
That's yeah,
so you're always hearing it, and sometimes it is doing more of a rock beat. It's really pounding in the way that jazz drums usually aren't. Most jazz drums I'd describe as more skittering, I guess, where they're kind of nimble and going all over the place. This is maybe the longest we've talked about an album without talking about individual tracks, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of statements to make about the whole thing.
Yeah.
We can get a little granular. The first song, what is it called? Images, is like directly a Sun Ra song from Space is the Place, and it's the like Sun Ra version is much more it's like one of his mellower songs generally, and so it's like they like totally throw that to the wind in this version.
Yeah.
It's just like starts off the album with at 11. It's so fucking loud.
Yeah, it's so extremely different than the vibe of the original composition. On Shibuboshi, like the first sound you get is that drum crash, and then like this distorted guitar, like like kind of
Yeah.
announcing its presence, and then this wall of horns introduces you to what you're in for, I guess, while still using that incredible melody from the Sun Ra piece.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way they what they do with like the main kind of like refrain, I guess, or like the main motif at the from the Sun Ra one. It's just like and it's like it's a pretty like a nice accessible melody, but in the Sun Ra version, it's interesting. It's got all this like really like the stuff that like the harmony they do below it, and like all the way it's orchestrated in that version makes it into this really kind of like this thing that holds a lot of tension, and it kind of is like what's going on, this little weird you feel this like
it's like it's been soured,
like you're like it's like sour is a good word in this like. Yeah, it's like the I don't know. It's like this little thing. It's like we're like sort of floating off the earth a little bit. This music isn't quite right. And in this version, they like take that and they keep a very sort of harmonically complex kind of orchestration of it, but then it's just like way louder.
Yeah.
And so it's just like instead it's just like we're like exploding off the earth, you know? Or it's like we're just kind of
yeah. Yeah, the contrast is really cool, I think. Yeah, like around like 3.5 minutes where it's just these like basically shots of noise where they're all blasting on this one dissonant this one dissonant chord. It's like the whole band is screaming, and then it kind of alternates between the melody, like bringing that back, and these solo sections. But even the solo sections, like there's usually a bunch of other instruments that are quote unquote soloing in the background too, just less prominently.
I know that was the thing I want to comment on. It's like the way they do solos in this album is so interesting because it's just like you almost like don't notice it's a solo unless you're paying attention, because it'll be like a solo like. At like around 4 minutes here, they have that guitar solo, but then they also have like a crazy percussion. Like they have this like all this like insane percussion going on behind it.
Yeah,
and it's just like there's all this like I don't know. It feels like you're in this like giant factory or something. It's like there's so much noise.
Yeah,
around 2 minutes, there's like a sax solo. It's like in the context of all of this like of like this like the bass is doing this like really like gnarly thing, and they have all this percussion too. It's just
a kind of dirty bass tone. It's kind of almost droning. It's just like underneath it. But it has its own kind of internal logic to it. You're never
totally.
You're never like confused about why something's happening, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot of people's reaction when they hear free jazz, or even just jazz in general, if they're completely uninitiated, but certainly free jazz. I think there's this conception of that people are just pretending to like it when it comes to free
it's
jazz.
Noise.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that's just like random. It's completely random. Like you're just being pretentious if you pretend you like that.
Yeah, people say that shit about anything that's like inaccessible. It like takes a bit of work, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean,
if it's like something that takes a bit of like time to understand, like it's like okay to like not want to put the time in, you know, if you just like don't have time for it. But then it's like rather than like being self-aware about that, there's this like tendency to just be like, oh yeah, no, people are just making it up. Yeah. Anyway, the really clear like idea of each song is so clear that it is like I don't know, it makes it it adds a layer of accessibility to it, which I think is very kind of appealing, despite how like intense it is.
Yeah, because there is free jazz out there for sure, where there are very few elements of it that are actually composed, and it is mostly improv. So
Yeah.
That certainly is harder to get into because there's intentionally a lot less to latch onto, and you kind of it's up to you whether you can kind of see what they're doing or whether you think there's something to what they're doing.
Yeah.
That strong composition is always there in this album, so I think it's like kind of undeniable that they're doing something with it. Like I showed this to my brother and he was immediately like, "Oh, this is so cool."
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Um
Pass the brother test.
I know. But if I had showed him, or no, I did. I said he was asking me for like some jazz that will keep him awake while he's studying. So
well, this will keep you awake.
yeah. I was like, well, this one definitely will. And then I said, if you really want something that's out there, you can also try this. And I sent him Machine Gun by Peter Brotzman. And he was like, yeah, I liked that Japanese one. The other one was a bit much for me. That kind of highlights the difference between like the more truly free jazz, I guess.
Yeah. I know that one. Yeah, lacking much to grab onto in terms of like normal of like standard compositional elements.
Yeah, like after a while, it drifts into just free improv where there are kind of no longer elements that even identify it as jazz music in particular.
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum for sure.
So you got any tracks you want to shout out?
Well, we brought up images, so maybe we should talk about Space is the Place, which is also Sun Ra.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like one of Sun Ra's signature songs. I don't know if that's actually true.
Yeah, it's definitely like the namespace is the place is like one of his like. That's like one of the things people know about him, and perhaps that's like that's like a like bigger life than just like the song itself.
Yeah,
you know, that's like a I don't know slogan, but that like string of words.
It's kind of his
associated with him.
His ethos summed up.
Yeah,
his motto.
I'm gonna say there's like a two-way tie for my favorite, and this is like one of them.
Yeah,
like this one's I'd say much more similar to the Sun Ra version than Images is. Because the original one is extremely like the Sun Ra version is like also very pretty like high energy and phonetic. It's like not as it doesn't have like as many. It's not as dense as this one, but it's got like I mean the basis of the song is this like there's this like vocal part which is like space is the place, space is the place, and then they have. In the Sun Ra version, then you have I think Sun Ra just like doing like ad libs on top of it, which is
yeah.
And then it's like this like kind of extended jam thing with like aside from those elements, I'd say like one of the key parts of the song is this like kind of low. There's like these lone horse sections which they sort of do. I think they have horns do it in this version, but they also have the bass do it. But it's like doing this really off kilter line, which is like do 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 do.
Yeah, and that bass line is in like 5/4.
Yeah, it is 5/4, and so it's 5/4, and then the vocals are in 4/4.
Yeah.
Space is the plan. Space is, the effect of that of like this like syncopated thing is like. It's like so off kilter and weird. It's like it's like impossible to like count along.
Yeah,
in your head, it's like so like ugh, like offsetting.
Yeah,
and then it's like totally
it like kind of contributes to a psychedelic effect because it makes you kind of almost feel like you're losing control. Your kind of ability to follow along with it is never quite there, even as it keeps repeating itself. Like it's always just a little beyond making sense is kind of how it feels psychologically to me.
Yeah, just like it like pulls you out into outer space. It's like totally you're like, oh god, I can't follow it. I'm just being like pulled along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that like every math, I don't fucking know. Every once in a while, they like kind of sync up again for a measure because
Yeah.
you know they'll repeat often enough that they eventually come back together, and then they drift farther apart.
Yeah.
So it's this like constant motion, even as they keep repeating those ideas, and then chaos ensues around it as that's happening. The version on Shibuboshi continues that, those elements are there,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, first of all, that that drum beat,
Yeah.
like, oh my god, it's like this break beat almost type of thing.
Yeah.
But like obviously, you know, live drum, and they're not like constantly holding on to that contrast between the vocals and the bass line, like in the Sun Ra version.
Yeah.
Like they'll kind of switch back and forth between like, okay, we're doing the like space is the place like rhythm, and then now we're doing the like do 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 do. So they do like kind of separate it sometimes. But
That's a thing I really love, and how they do a really interesting thing with how they sequence this, because they change it up from the original, and like they establish the main themes of the song, like the principal elements, and then they strip it, and then they immediately like strip it way down to just the bass line, and then they have like with like a ton of space, and they let you like sit with that for a bit with like this like comparatively mellow thing where they just have this like where they have like trumpets just kind of like doing kind of like
yeah,
like just like this shit over just the bass line, and they like slowly crescendo like build the intensity until they have the whole band just like hammering on the bass line, like just doubling the bass line with like a bunch of layers.
mm-hmm.
And it's like so thick and fucking cathartic the way everything like adds up, and then they finally bring back the space of the place melody, and then they like strip it back again, and then they bring it back again. It's just like the way they like play with the dynamics there is just so awesome.
Yeah, so they kind of take it from this kind of abstract, intentionally obtuse kind of idea to a really cathartic one. I think that's super cool. It is still pretty abstract and avant-garde in the grand scheme of music, I guess. But I like how they kind of make it more direct, but in this very creative way. Like they don't take away what makes the composition interesting in the first place, and every soloist is absolutely ripping.
Yeah, I know. They just do it effortlessly. They have like one trumpet. The way it's harmonizing is really fun. It's doing this like it's like it's got this sort of like, I don't know, like attitude to it or something. That I really love. Yeah, oh man, this track is so fucking good.
Yeah, it's like they're riffing, like it's genuinely heavy.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, they really turn it into kind of like just a riff.
I also like the way they use overblowing on like the saxophones, where there's this technique. I don't play saxophone. I don't know how to do it. But,
yeah, the non-saxophonist.
Yeah, but I know it's like you intentionally make the saxophone distort itself.
Yeah, so it kind of honks.
Yeah, yeah, honking is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's like the John Coltrane thing. You make it scream a little bit.
And that's kind of like one of the trademarks of free jazz in general, because the free jazz movement was, I mean, Ornette Coleman was also huge in that, but a lot of it is kind of following in the footsteps of John Coltrane's later stuff.
Yeah, in particular, there's a certain style, just like on the tenor sax, just like torturing it in a particular way that I think is just like, we'll always kind of be indebted to what John Coltrane did. It's like so distinctive. Oh yeah, check out the fucking sax solo at like, what is it, like, it's like 6:05 or something. So many fucking notes. Oh my god.
Yeah. Crazy runs there.
Yeah, oh man.
Yeah, it's like these sheets of notes and then descending into like that overblown low note, the like honking like
Yeah. Yeah, that's very culture like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's mostly what I got. It's just nonstop heat, that whole song.
Yeah, it is just nonstop heat. Yeah, I think another one I wanted to throw out there. This one's probably this is the probably other side of the tie for my favorite is the track Nadam.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second track on the album. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, holy shit. It's from the first second. You can just tell like how slow but loud they're doing that melody with so many different horns.
I know the drums are just like
it sounds like victory. I don't know.
I know, it's like you've already won, you just started the song.
Yeah, the sun is coming up, and you're like, yes.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, it is like this. This is another thing I love about the way they do solos on this album. Like, if you just listen to like the start of the song, they just immediately already have a sax like doing a free jazz solo over it. Like, you haven't even like started the song, and it's just already you got this like, yeah. Just like right. It's just like unrestrained energy just coming. It's just like they like it's like you just couldn't like hold itself back. And like the whole thing is really based around this one melody, which is like and maybe like variations on it, or which is like this do 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 do. So it's like that. It's a simple little like idea, and so they of course start the song playing it really slowly in like the most grand huge way imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they're doing across this album, they did a ton on Spaces of the Place, as well as Images, but like they like just give it to you like 100 at the start, and then it like they like pull it back and meditate on it for a bit, and like and then sort of let energy build up, and then at some point they're like, and then at some point they get into it, and they're doing this like and they return to and they like have the whole forgetting after like a few minutes of like sort of meditating on it slowly, it's like it like builds back up to like the whole band playing it much faster. So it's like do 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 do, and the drums are doing this like almost like ska kind of thing. It's like do 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 do. The song is sort of built around the main melody and giving and like letting it evolve it and grow, and then turning into these like total like, and eventually by the end they're just going through these like huge totally like noisy free jazz sections.
Yeah,
and it goes almost all the way into chaos, and then they finally like bring it all back in the later part of the song. and like oh man, they just keep like returning to it.
Yeah, those sections where everything becomes like totally untethered, that's maybe the most free that it gets on the album. But then when the time is right, it just all snaps back into place all at once, then they're off again.
Yeah, it's like always ready to come back to coalesce to like all do the same thing for a little bit, and then and
that kind of is part of what gives it the proggy feel, I think.
Oh yeah, that was the thing I was gonna say about the song. Is this has like the reminds me the most of like a sort of classic prog thing where they like you like establish a theme, and then you like go off and do something else, and then like return to the theme much later, like many minutes later.
Yeah,
and you're like, remember this? Yeah. It's almost kind of like it's almost kind of like a trope, but like when it's done well, it just can be so gratifying.
Yeah, it's just such a cool way to explore musical ideas. It's like this is the launching off point, and these are the different variations or how this could lead to a different thing, and then you bring it all back.
Yeah.
Kind of contextualize everything. Then that's followed up by Quasar, which is is very wacky.
This one's very Sun Ra. This one's like, yeah, sounds very much like a random Sun Ra song.
It does, yeah. I don't know what effects they have on that thing, but it sounds like some sea creature.
I know. Is it like an organ or something? Or, it's a guitar? Holy shit.
I'm pretty sure it's a guitar. They make it sound like this weird electric organ.
Yeah, it sounds like one of those like where Sun Ra will just start like playing shit on like the organ or whatever, and it's just like everyone else, and you can tell the rest of the band is like, oh yeah, just let him do his thing. Plays a bunch of shit, and it's like, what? It just like sounds totally wacky. Yeah, that's fun.
I think it's like a chorus effect and some reverb, with like some kind of
some kind of like harmonizer or something.
Yeah,
it's just totally
they have like some automatic harmonizer that puts a fifth on it or something.
Yeah. It's got this like it sounds like way too tonal for like what they're doing. The one after is called Pa.
Yeah, Pa.
Maybe it's Pennsylvania. Maybe it's
I
Pennsylvania.
Know, like PA.
Yeah, they all really made a song about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, they just love cool. Pennsylvania.
Not enough to spell it out though.
No.
There's like so much fucking groove to it.
Yeah, they're really swinging in a classic jazz way.
Check out like 344 or something. They go into the section where it's like the bass is just going like do 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 do, and they got this like awesome like trumpet solo over it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the drums are doing like this like rim shot thing or whatever that is. Or they're
it's like it turns
off the side.
Like the rhythm section is almost like a dub reggae thing for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, the syncopation.
Oh man, it makes my head fucking bob so hard. Oh yeah, another groovy one. The one after that, Akon. I was like jamming to this one on the keyboard earlier. It's like so fun because it's like simple enough for someone who's not very good at like who can't really play jazz like me, but I can like play the blues scale, and I could totally just like because it's just got this like doom ding doom ding doom doom doom.
That's another one of those extremely triumphant melodies.
They like modulated a couple times too. Like,
yeah,
they, like, modulated.
and it never feels corny. It's always just like yes,
yeah, let's go. This almost reminds me of like it almost sounds like a totally whacked out version of like a school marching band playing like a fight song, you know?
Yeah, I could hear it.
I could just vaguely hear this at like a football game or something.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but I can hear it. When I do pro wrestling, this will be the song I walk out to.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be so cool.
Die. Just get absolutely killed.
Yeah, I know. You'll fucking you'll just immediately get killed.
Yeah. Your neck break my neck with snapped. A chair.
That'd be so awesome. You have like this big epic opening. It takes like 3 minutes for you to walk out. You're just like getting the fucking crowd going. It's like everyone's so hype, and they just fucking like break your neck immediately. You're just like dead.
Somebody who's like 300 pounds heavier than me.
They just like smack you. You just get like you just get like smacked across the face and you're like dead.
Yeah. That's how I want to go out.
I don't know. I'll shout out the closer's another one with one of these big triumphant melodies. It's really awesome. It's kind of like the closer on the McCoy Tyner album we did an episode on. Remember where it starts with just like drums and it just like this like slow build up with all the, so you finally get to like the big like you finally get to the part that actually like tells you what the song is about.
Yeah.
But it's like there's like a few minutes of just like drums first.
You need a couple breathers, like a couple breather moments on the album, or else it would just fatigue you too much to sit through the whole thing and pay attention. But yeah, it's a fantastic melody to kind of bring the whole thing home.
Yeah, I mean the fucking like right at the like the last like minute or something of the track when they go into this halftime thing.
When they bring the riff back but slower.
Yeah. Oh yeah, what a fucking ending. Jesus.
Yeah, it's like a victory lap or something.
Yeah.
And then it just descends into free jazz chaos for like a few seconds and then
gotta just let it like rumble for
Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention forever ago that on several of the tracks here, there are a few musicians who actually played with Sun Ra on some of his classic albums featured on here. Marshall Allen, Elson Nascimento, Michael Ray. They played on Marshall Allen was on Space is the Place.
That's cool. In the Magic City.
And also Liquidity, I think.
Liquidity. Oh, and Sleeping
some
Beauty
of them.
And Strange Celestial.
Yeah, Michael Ray was on.
Not most of them.
Yeah, and Liquidity is a classic Sun Ra album, like probably his most popular.
It's funny that they didn't have them on like the actual Sun Ra songs. Like they would do all themselves. Yeah. It was for the originals. They brought in the Sun Ra people.
It's kind of ballsy.
Like one of the kind of overtones of this album is like this being just sort of like generally like an homage to the Sun Ra, and just kind of like really the most respectful way, which is like doing their own thing rather than just like trying to be Sun Ra, you know? They're like they're taking like the the like sort of artistic like kernel at the center of the of his songs and like some of his like his sort of like project, and making a and like using it as a seed for their own thing rather than like a just like a
a recreation
reproduction. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Totally agree.
Guess that's the album, isn't it?
I guess we fucking did it.
Bit more of a straight episode, I guess. We're pretty on topic.
Yeah, we weren't fucking idiots this time.
Yeah. We didn't fuck around today.
Or any other day. Actually, it's other days we do.
Yeah, we usually do.
We usually fuck around.
We're usually on our bullshit.
Yeah, a couple of bullshitters, you and I.
Doctor says it's a terminal.
It's terminal. I'm a terminal bullshitter.
Diagnose you with terminal bullshittery. As is the case with most of the music we talk about, listen to it. Maybe
or don't.
Yeah, or don't. I mean, if you think that jazz is like too boring and laid back for you, and you somehow listened this far into the episode about this jazz album, then give it a shot, bro. Because it's very high energy.
Might just be your cup of tea.
Yeah. Or if you've been getting into jazz and you want something a bit farther out there, it'll do that.
Keep your friends close.
But your enemies closer.
Your enemies don't do that close.
Yeah, actually, it's probably better for you to not surround yourself with those kinds of people.
Yeah. In all honesty, probably they're probably fine where they are.
Yeah.
If not farther away. hope you have a good day. Hope you don't have a bad day.
I certainly hope you don't have a bad day.
That would be real sad.
You would disappoint us greatly.
We'd really kind of mad at you, actually.
Yeah.
Be a little mad.
If you have a bad day, it's probably your fault.
It's probably your fault. Probably because you're idiot.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you listen to this album, which I won't try to pronounce again, then your day will be better.
There you go. And with that, I will cease to record.
See ya. Get out of here.